Hey, welcome to Webmasters FM. Today I have Mike. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back. I think this is my third time, maybe.
Probably. I've gotten really lazy about finding new people. I'll get a bunch of recommendations. I'll reach out, calendars, yeah, we're going to do it, calendar, and then I just go. So just go to my old
Maybe
favorites.
this is just our podcast now.
Yeah, there we go. I think there's probably a lot we could talk about. There's probably a lot we could talk about and not record, but
Yeah.
let's talk about, I kind of want to talk about Ollie. Maybe I would assume if anybody is listening to this, they know what Ollie is, they know what WordPress is. But I guess maybe you could give the elevator pitch of Ollie, and then I want to talk about two of the new sort of features that came out this year that we haven't really had a chance to dive into. But yeah, maybe how do you pitch Ollie these days?
I don't know. It's so hard to pitch anything these days in this crazy transition. But yeah, well, I think a lot of people would know Ollie as it was a full site editing theme, a block theme for WordPress. It has totally evolved, obviously, from that. We still have that. That still kind of powers the design system of Ollie. But it's more at this point about Ollie Pro, which is a professional design library and kind of a builder toolkit with some kind of traditional WordPress blocks and some settings and kind of extensions, and also now obviously some really cool AI features. So Ollie has become more of like a kind of a builder suite, an ecosystem, and that's the direction it's going now.
Yeah, it's like hard to characterize what some of the features are. I was working on a site that's Ollie the other day, and the feature where I had I had the 3 columns with some cards in each column, and when I changed one card to like adjust the padding, it automatically goes, "Hey, let me just fix all the cards in this column." Like those little sort of like nice to have features are probably what I think of most, more than like the theme itself. It's like, oh, you just took a thing I did and made it like 15 seconds faster by just kind of understanding design and stuff like that. I think those are the things, like the little touches in Ollie that I probably like the most. But
Yeah, me too. And that's like I build those things for me many times where it's like, why am I, if I'm working in a grid that's all the same, why do I have to apply settings like 1,000 times to all these items?
yeah,
And so we just created a thing where it synced it up. And I think, yeah, that's like kind of the essence of Ollie is like finding these, like taking an opinion about like, this is a site building tool. We're treating WordPress as like a professional site building tool. And then from that context, it's like, well, then what would you need to do that? And it's things like that, these little nice touches where it's like, oh, we'll just sync these together. Your design changes are done. So Ollie is like, it's a lot of things, but it's kind of like this kind of design and intelligence layer in WordPress that like transforms it into like a WordPress Pro kind of thing.
yeah, and I feel like I don't feel like I hear about this as much, but there was like a really big push for those other page builders. I mean, it's probably still out there. I just don't pay attention to it. But of like, you need CSS classes and you need to like build a design library from the ground up, and you need to have all this control over everything. And you shouldn't be in a visual editor doing these things. You should be like scoping classes and reusable components and stuff. And like, I feel like that stuff always sounds really good in theory. And then when you kind of get into most of your WordPress stuff, you're like, no, I just kind of want to open the block editor and I just want it to like do some nice things for me. Like I don't feel like I have to treat every project like it's like DevOps. Everything is completely optimized and stuff. Sometimes like in WordPress, it's kind of just, let me just open it and mess around and see what I like. And there's good guardrails and good patterns to pull from. Then it's like, I don't know. I feel like that's always good enough for me for WordPress. I don't know if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the cool thing is you can still do both. You can write all your code and you could like still do all that in WordPress and everything, but we just have chosen to embrace where it is and kind of the more like I don't want, no code, whatever phrase. I don't want people to start yelling at me for it's not technically no code, whatever you want to call it, less code. I
Hmm.
personally, I'm just and I've like been a designer and a developer for decades now. I love writing code and all that, but at this point, it's like I don't really want to mess with all that, and I don't think we need to for most sites. Like the Ollie site, I manage entirely in the block editor. It's built there. I hop in there, I update it. It's so easy. I don't think about code or classes or anything. It just is. It's so clean and easy and manageable over the long term. And so I think we're just okay saying that Ollie is this kind of product for people who want to build websites like this. If you
Hmm.
still want to like go hard and you're more like you want like more of a builder kind of experience, like Ollie is not for you. That's not the target audience. We're saying no for people who want to build like awesome websites. fast, beautiful, and they're like, customizable and tweakable, but also we give you all of these tools to help you like short circuit all of these annoying steps. That's what who Ollie is for. Is like this new wave of building websites with the block editor and AI as a companion. So more that way, less the other way. Not that there's anything
Yeah.
wrong with that.
Yeah, and I think it's like different projects need different things. I think for a lot, I think I've done WordPress sites where you need everything really tightly version controlled and everything, really happens in Git and you're testing it and all this sort of stuff. And then there's sometimes where it's like, you know, a marketing site or something where you're like, well, I just want to get some content out there quickly. And the, the like barrier between like I needed a developer to make this custom fields with this custom PHP template and then I deploy it up and all that stuff. Like there's a place for that. But like, I think a lot of people on WordPress, they just, they don't really have time or the bandwidth for that. And they just want to like get stuff out there. Cause the publishing is probably the most important part. So
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I like that it's a opinionated approach on it. Cause if there's one thing in WordPress that we don't have a lot is like the opinionated approach of how to do things. I don't know
Right.
if you have that issue where you're like, there's 100 ways to do everything, and sometimes that's good, and sometimes that's really hard to grapple with.
It's hard to move on from where we are largely because we have all these kind of tentacles reaching to like old WordPress and kind of these new kind of screens that we're getting and kind of things touching over here. And when it is kind of for everyone, for every use case, it's like, well, you can't lean too far this way because then doesn't make sense, or it does create this tricky problem we have. Now you can still grow and modernize in other ways like we have, but yeah, you're right. It's like you can't go too far, and that's where something like Ollie or some of these other things. It's like it is just WordPress. It's all core WordPress. We just kind of bend it a little bit towards this thing that we want to do. So, like I said, like cutting out all of these steps, like you're saying, if you're in WordPress and you're like, go change your color palette, it's like you could do that 4 or 5 different ways.
Yeah,
You can go to the site editor to do it. You could do it in the global styles panel in the paid block editor. There's like all these different ways of doing it. So yeah, so I think just everything we do now going forward is going to be like, how do we continue to delete all of these steps out of this process? Because
hmm
people are, there's so many new platforms popping up. People are experimenting with everything. Like WordPress's growth is not guaranteed, or like so we have to continue figuring out taking all of this kind of complexity out of WordPress and giving them still the power on the other end.
yeah. And one of the places where you put in a lot of work recently was adding WooCommerce support. And I guess I should disclosure I work at WooCommerce, so I'm well aware from the backside of how complicated it sometimes is to use WooCommerce with a block theme. I think there's a lot of good stuff in there that's just, it's maybe not as discoverable. Like I said, there's like so many ways to do everything. It's hard to know. WooCommerce, I feel like has like over 100 something blocks that it has to make because, you have your product and your price and your category and your sale tag and your reviews and it's like, there's so many different pieces to it, but you like conquered the mountain and brought WooCommerce templates into Ollie. How was that process? And like, do you feel like you gained anything out of doing the work of making Woo compatible with Ollie?
Yeah, it was, I think I spent about 2 months on and off with other, Ollie responsibilities working on it. So I put some serious time into it. Viewers should know, if they don't know me, I am kind of just attention to detail and kind of intricate design work and kind of just crafting something unique that is kind of bulletproof. When it hits the page, it just looks good all the time. That is something we always strive for. And so with Woo, it was, well, first of all, I'll just say that it was further along than I thought for a block to be like implemented with the block theme, because I checked it out several months before that and I was like, whoo, doggy, I don't know. But then when I checked it out again, I was like, okay, there are actually blocks for a lot of these things. And so, yeah, I just dove in and started. And so, yeah, I would say it had more blocks than I thought. The thing that probably was the biggest hurdle was that for, a lot of the blocks they did have, they just didn't have enough settings to get
hmm
like granular design in there.
Yeah.
And that makes it tricky because then you're automatically, it's like, well, then if I want to change this, I have to use CSS. And then obviously the trick there is that the CSS, the classes can change and do change. And so then you're kind of left with like, well, what do I do here? It's almost like Woo needs to be so good out of the box. It looks, the screens, all those default screens need to look so good that nobody wants to customize them or needs to, or they go granular enough to where people can dial in every screen with the settings they would expect so that they can get the design how they want. So it was an experience. I would say, like, I was happy to do it so I know where Woo was at, because obviously there's a huge amount of potential. And as a kind of full site editing project ecosystem, we want to make sure that Woo is covered in this and that it kind of fits our kind of trajectory of like unabashedly full site editing and forward facing. We're not interested in like classic WooCommerce stuff. We're like the
Yeah.
FSE version. So
Yeah, and the thing with the Woo blocks is I would say like half the time they do something and then they go back to WordPress and then they like contribute to WordPress itself, where it's like, oh, we need a block that can do interactions. So then we have the interactivity API, which goes into WordPress, and then WooCommerce inherits it. So if they want to fix it, they got to fix it in WordPress. And it's a good thing because it gives everybody access to these tools, but it takes so much longer because WordPress only comes out every few months. And so you're kind of like dealing, and just it's hard to commit to WordPress. It's just such a big project and stuff. So I feel like that's part of it. And then the other part, like you said, with the blocks, there is an open issue right now tracking all the blocks and what style supports they have, because a lot of them don't support. Maybe they have some of the basic ones, but they don't have a lot of the newer ones, like some of the dimensions and border and all that stuff. But also, like, a lot of the blocks in WooCommerce, they're not like, the basic stuff, a paragraph, an image, whatever, that's kind of covered. A block in WooCommerce is almost always something more complicated. Like, it's a reviews thing
right.
that shows a bunch of star icons, and the star icons change and they're clickable, or it's a sale badge, but it's not just the text. There's a border around it and it has to have dynamic text. And, so there's a lot of these blocks. And I feel like the seesaw that they keep going back and forth with is, do we just make one block with some basic settings and the design kind of looks good out of the box? Or does that block have like 100 tiny little blocks inside of it so you can change all the text and all the
Right.
little things inside of it? And I don't think there's like a really good answer either way. I think there's enough like low hanging fruit out there that's being tracked that can improve a lot of that stuff. But yeah, when I look at like a standard product page, and you realize, like, I don't know, there's like 30 or 40 blocks there of different things that you need to design, and you want to make it coherent, and you want that add to cart button to look the same on every page, and you want your, variable options and your color swatches and stuff to look the same across the site. Like, it's it's pretty complicated. So I'm pretty impressed that you were able to make it through it. I'm watching our internal team is working on a default block theme for Woo, and it's a lot of the same stuff, and overriding the cart, the checkout, all the different pages and stuff. And so there's a lot there, but I feel like what I've been hearing from a lot of people is this idea that they want product pages to be more flexible and more marketing friendly. And I feel like you and I had talked about that a little
Yeah.
bit while you're working on it, which is like, if I have a couple of like really banner featured products, I don't want them to have the same sort of template. I want to make like a full custom landing page and all that sort of stuff. Did you ever have experienced that? Like, how crazy can I get customizing like good landing pages for products? Like, were there gaps there?
Yeah, we did talk about that. And like the idea is that, or at least one of the ideas is, say I have like kind of one of my featured products, I might want to, for that product, have my product layout, but maybe I want to add a few more sections where I can kind of like design something really unique with blocks in the block editor, like we do with other patterns and stuff. And then kind of like a second content area, where I
Yeah.
could do that within a template. But obviously you can't do that right now. It's kind of like the template is the template. So you could do that, find a solution in that direction, or you could just create more templates. But then it's like, well, then you're creating a bunch of like, random, potentially one-off templates for different products, and that also doesn't feel great. Although, it's still workable. So I think I released a few templates with it, but I think, it does raise a bigger question of like, I don't know, like you're saying, with the kind of struggle of customization in these things, and they're higher stakes because it's e-commerce, and so you want to have some guidance and guardrails for people so that their things convert. And so that's where it's like, I don't know, it's a good question. Is it like super granular control over these things, or does it output maybe just a few different layouts with styles that hopefully absorb, the theme styles or whatever, and then, kind of like the Stripe checkout pages and things like that. They're all kind of a standardized design, whatever.
Hmm.
That's a whole different tangent, but yeah, it's a good question, and ultimately, I decided to delete a lot of those ideas and keep it super simple because,
Hmm.
frankly, I don't spend a lot of time in WooCommerce, so I don't know deeply how people use it. And so I didn't want to make
Yeah.
a bunch of assumptions and build towards those assumptions without knowing that, like, how do people even use templates in there? Do they care? Do they want different designs? So we found different ways of kind of adding some Ollie flavor while also staying as close as possible to like the core Woo experience. Yeah.
Yeah, and in classic WordPress, you could do product templates based on category, I think. So, like, okay, I want all my clothing products to look this way, and I want all of my, if PHP, you could get even more granular. You could say, I want all of my variable products to look a certain way, or all my subscription products to look a certain way. That's, I
Hmm.
think, probably less needed, but possible, but at least, different templates by category. I think the site editor doesn't fully support that yet. And I know I've like seen discussions, but usually once you get to that point, if you're that crazy, you probably have a developer working on this stuff. And that's the
Yeah.
thing about WordPress is like, there's really nothing you can't do. Like, I think we're talking about what can I do in the site editor and stuff, but like,
Right.
slap a custom block on there or something, and like a developer can literally do anything they want with it. It just requires that extra control.
Yeah.
But like, giving people access, especially like you said, the guardrails, because you mentioned like the checkout. That's been a huge thing. We have like short code, classic checkout that you could do literally whatever you want to it. Like you could move the
Yeah.
fields, delete the fields, add whatever. Then we have this block one that's a little closer to like the Stripe or the Shopify experience where it's like, no, we're just going to do some best practices. It's not super customizable, but it's like, we know it converts better. We test it. Like it's very clearly a better experience for you. But yes, you're not going to be able to do all the weird, crazy things that like WooCommerce people want to do. And so it's like just I feel like a constant balance between those two things. And
Hmm.
I'm I'm just glad like I use Woo with block themes on a couple sites and it works pretty well. And I like honestly would not want to go back to the way it was before. So I'm just grateful that we have like a good I like when we shared your theme internally, there was a lot of like, oh wow, made WooCommerce look like that. Like it was quite impressive. And so I'm glad that you did it and you did it without having to like do the Elementor approach, which is we're going to make custom blocks for every single thing ourselves. Like you used the
Yeah.
carousel, you used the core blocks. So,
Hmm.
hats off to you on that.
Yeah, yeah, and we use some like variation blocks. I think it's a underused thing, just making a variation of a block and kind of tweaking it and adding some additional settings and things like that. Yeah, it was a process, but it was a valuable learning experience because, like you said, like you could do all this stuff with WordPress. Like if you were a developer, you were making something a site, you could do that. But my job is to make something distributable, and that's like a whole
Hmm.
different job. Is to make something great kind of out of the box, and you can like dump it on any site and it is reliably works that well. That's why you can't get too we can't get too granular with the kind of things we ship because I don't want to get trapped into I it's we build for like the median best delightful experience and
Hmm.
hope that it's still like better than most experiences. So yeah, and I think the final thing that I kept coming back to when working on Woo was like where I would hit these roadblocks where it's like, killer, can't do that, bummer. Is like, and I tell people this with WordPress as well. It's like if you want to figure out these problems, these hills that people are going to get stuck on, you need to like have somebody design a WooCommerce store like that is not like the default output, like just a kind of slightly cool looking design, and then have two or three people go and try to build that like pixel for pixel and
Hmm.
note everything along the way because that's all it takes before you see, oh, I can't customize this block, I guess I have to write CSS, and then like note all those things, and then like with that information you can decide, well, how do we make it so that the average person can get a design to look like this, is it CSS, is it this, do we accommodate that? I feel the same way with WordPress. Sometimes with some of our usability problems and UX stuff, I'm like, I don't know if people are building like real websites with this stuff. It feels like if you were trying to build a kind of, a custom website that had, modern features on it, you would immediately be like, oh, wow, we don't have this, this, and this. How do people do this? I don't know. these questions I think are so important right now, especially as we kind of are getting shaken up a little bit and people are deciding like, am I staying in WordPress? And it's like, I don't know, is WordPress going to give me something to tweak my responsive controls or an underlying system that my agent can use to do that? I don't know. So a lot of these questions can be solved by just building and kind of recording.
Yeah, I did earlier this year. I had to do a support rotation internally. So I worked with, we have like an in-house team that just, they're basically like an agency and they just do kind of like high profile sites or like friends of the company, that kind of stuff. And they were doing a Woo store. So I joined them for a week to like design. And I had a lot of those same things where I was like, oh, wait, are you guys doing this in CSS? Is there block settings for this? How do I
Mhm.
put that into the theme? Because it was the classic, like, here's a Figma file. Now go build it on Woo. And after
Mhm.
talking to them, it was like, oh, they do exactly that. And they have a ton of feedback. And I was like, oh, okay, so now I know where to get that feedback. And so we turned it into like a discussion about
That's
trying to figure
perfect.
out exactly that. Like, do I target the CSS? Like, I'm fine to do that, but like, should I do that? Is that safe? Could we make it safe? Can we have a CSS framework? And then the other piece of it is while I was doing that, this was like earlier in the year. So it was like right after everyone was like, AI is really good now, but it was still maybe, I'd say like December, AI got really good. And then sometime in like April, I feel like I personally leveled up and knew how to use it better. So this was between those
Mhm.
2 points where like the AI was pretty good. I still didn't know how to use it very well. And I was trying to bring that into it and learning like, okay, how can I use AI with WordPress to make a good design? Because I could use AI with static HTML and make whatever design you want because you have the total
Mhm.
freedom. But like you said, when you're making with WordPress, you're making something that has to be editable in the block editor for the future.
Mhm.
So since then, you've launched AI stuff for Ollie, MCP tools, and some of the other
Mhm.
skill and some other things. Maybe you walk me through like what you released and like how you got to, because there's so many ways to do it, but like how you got to like something where you said, okay, this is releasable.
Yeah, that's such a tough thing to figure out right now. Like, what do we release? You know, you don't want to have to claw things back after like made irrelevant in 3 months. But yeah, first we did the MCP. That seemed like the obvious one because you know a lot of buildery people are already kind of working with MCPs, and I always take these opportunities to learn this stuff myself. So it's like, well, let's build an Ollie MCP and see what the heck it does and figure it out. And we're still figuring it out. There's so much nuance to all of it. And, you know, because you're working with an agent, it's kind of unpredictable. Sometimes you can ask the same thing and get different answers or totally different responses. So, yeah, we did the Ollie MCP and it effectively knows Ollie and Ollie Pro and how to design with it. And you pair it with a skill file and it kind of knows the kind of whole system and kind of how to work with patterns and to ping the Ollie Pro cloud library to pull down suggestions. And again, cutting out all of this manual stuff. It's just going and grabbing pre-designed things. And so, yeah, we're experimenting with that. And, if you've ever worked with MCP, it's kind of, it's a fine line of what you're trying to make because you want it to be like acute enough that it's helpful. But
Mm-hmm.
if you jam too much stuff in there, it gets slow. It's kind of too vague. It doesn't have great. Same with the skill. It doesn't have great kind of context. So it's kind of balancing them and just experimenting to see. So we're going to release some more kind of improvements to the skill file there because obviously it seems inevitable that there's going to be some form of AI site building in WordPress. I don't think we know what it is exactly yet. To your point about like WordPress is not a great the markup is not great for working with AI.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of confusing. It has to be like reworked a bunch of times and it's slower. So that is something we'll have to figure out because if we're all meant to be working with block code, it's going to have to be like faster and cleaner and simpler because it affects the design. It affects how good your design is, how quick it comes back and all that stuff. So that's and a lot of improvements coming with 7.0 and 7.1. So we're cool on that. And then just last week or recently, we released kind of two in editor AI features, kind of an obvious one that lets you, it's a design prompt block where you can kind of ask for designs and it goes in plain language and it goes and grabs them. And then we had a writing prompt block where you can generate content and add context. So kind of give it your site's context and help you write your marketing pages and things like that. And then an AI rewrite feature where you can like select text or a whole section and say, let's actually make this about this. Here's a page you can reference, and it'll go and change kind of that whole section. So these features, like if you look at them closely, you can see kind of where it's going, and that instead of a like full-blown AI, site builder in your sidebar that you're kind of chatting full time with, we're trying to
Hmm.
solve these problems where they are, at least right now. It's like, solve this problem, fix this content, do this, because it's quicker to send just that small section to work on and fix than have the whole page go out and have it find the
Yeah.
thing in the page and fix it. So in the short term, we're going to kind of focus on some things like that, some obvious things, but kind of with a kind of intuitive interface around them.
Yeah, I've been watching a ton of internal experiments. Automatic did this thing where they let like all the engineers do whatever they want for a month and come up with like crazy ideas. And I probably saw 10 Woo AI things and probably a dozen WordPress AI things. And like, it's the mix between, do I add sparkle buttons like later throughout the interface, or do I have like one chat, but now everything needs to integrate with it and stuff? And it kind of like goes back and forth. And then some of the AI stuff is like, does it even need to start with a prompt? Is it, is it just under the hood?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody did a like an image optimizer type thing. So there's all these different like ways to do it. And I think we're still in the experimental phase. But I feel like the key thing is to like focus on like what is the user trying to do versus like what can AI, like you need to know what can AI do, what is it good at, but it's also like what am I trying to do? Like a lot of times I'll open
Mm-hmm.
up a site with Ollie and I'll have like, say I'm working like I work with some nonprofits that I help out with just to, like help their site, and they're like, yeah, we wrote all this content and it's just a bunch of bullet points or something, and you could just stick it in the post content, but it'd be kind of boring. That's why I have Ollie. So Ollie's got like a pattern for, some cards or a header on one side and a list of items on the other. And the idea that I could just be like, here's some content, find a pattern that works for it, put it in there, make it look like nice. I feel like that's the thing that I want the most, is just like,
Mm-hmm.
I have some content that, somebody wrote. I just find the good pattern for it. It's going to match the site, stick some content in it that I already wrote, things like that. I feel like that kind of stuff is really, really helpful.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think also kind of underscores some of the stuff we're doing with Ollie, or just my like interest and passion right now is like there are going to be questions about like the next big version of WordPress, or like big things that we have to do and all of that. But in the meantime, there are millions of people using the editor every day as is, without, a whole AI builder or, whatever. And if they're using Ollie, they're using the block editor, full site editing, and all that stuff. Like we have problems to solve for them today.
Yeah.
Those problems still have to be solved, even if we're going to build an AI, thing later. These problems are still here every day for them. It's like another reason why we ended up introducing our own kind of lightweight responsive controls. It's like I'm fully in support of the WordPress way, but like all of my users have problems today about needing to change their font sizes. So it's like, well, I'll just do it. Same thing with these kind of initial AI features we're releasing. It's a problem I have where I get on the Ollie site and it's like, well, I have this video script that I just made, but I want to update this section based on this video script. I just select the section, I say update it with this text. It goes boop boop boop, updates it, and then it's largely done, and it's good because it knows the Ollie voice and the Ollie style. This is kind of what I was talking about earlier, where it's like this is this new kind of transitiony kind of less code, more visual way of building websites. There's going to be some people who just entirely use the Claude desktop, or and build that way through CLIs and things. But there's going to be tons of people who still want to use the editor and pair it with AI, and like solve these little problems, so that working in the editor is fun and easy anyway if you end up in there. So I'm curious about solving a lot of these things. That's why we chose those two like obvious things where it's like, well, let's make a nice interface for just updating your content. Done. Okay. What's next? I think there's so much opportunity to solve these micro problems here.
Yeah, I think that's true. Like I was imagining, what if you opened WordPress and it's like how every app now where you open it and instead of a dashboard, it's just like a prompt and you're like, what do you want to do today? And it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like if I want to open up a prompt and talk to it, I have Claude or whatever to do that. What I think I've been trying to think like, what are the things that WordPress has that are so valuable that they'll still be valuable after like AI takes over everything? Because there's a lot of
Yeah.
things people are imagining of like, what if, we did headless WordPress with a front end that's just completely React and you could let your Claude design the front end completely. And, it's like, yeah, I mean, headless WordPress is a thing and it has a reason, but like, does that really take the benefits of it? Like, what are the benefits of WordPress? It's all the plugins, it's all of the extensions, it's like everything that's built on top of it. It's the fact that it lives
Hmm.
on a server and it can do things like, integrate feeds and like run jobs and do all these sort of like automated content tasks for you. And then I think the main benefit is like it's a true WYSIWYG of the front end of your site. Like it's literally when I open my site in the block editor, it looks exactly like on the front end, but I can literally click on everything and change it. And
Hmm.
I don't think there's going to be a version of WordPress where it's like I don't ever click on blocks. I just type to an agent like change my heading to say this. No, not that heading, the other heading below it. Like I don't think that workflow is going to work. I think like clicking on a piece of content and then being able to do something with it is for sure always going to be necessary. Like I'm always, if I want to change the font size, I don't want to ask an agent. I just want to be able to change the
Hmm.
font size. Like that's not good. I just don't think that's going to go away. And so I do think like the 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 skills and the CLI and the like MCP and all that stuff is important, and there's a ton of places I use that. But for like the task of designing my site, I think being in the block editor, looking at it, seeing it in real time, knowing what it's making, I feel like you're on the right track there because I feel like that's such a powerful benefit that a lot of the other tools out there kind of don't have because they generate it, but then if you want to change it, you got to regenerate it and you got to keep doing that. Whereas
Hmm.
like you can generate me a pattern, but it's like I know I can go in and just like do whatever I want to it now that it's there because it's blocks. So I feel
Hmm.
confident in that. Who knows? I mean, who knows what it's going to look like, but I feel like that has to make sense.
I do think bad UI is going to go away, like things that have historically just been bad or just waiting to be deprecated.
Hmm.
WordPress could fall prey to that too if we don't kind of like, get serious about the this new user experience and kind of iron it out to be like kind of bulletproof. But yeah, there's like so many different ways of imagining like remixing this whole experience around something else. But yeah, I would say I kind of lost my train of thought. But I completely lost my train of thought. It's
Oh,
gone.
I'll
It's
I'll
gone.
edit it out
I
and I'll
it was
just
it was gonna be so good too.
yeah. So good you couldn't even remember what it was.
Yep. What were we just talking about? CUI.
Yeah, clicking on things.
You don't have to edit this out. I think I got it back. So one thing I think is interesting is kind of thinking about like if an agent is going to be doing all of this stuff, what does it look like if you kind of x-rayed WordPress and showed these different routes that people take? For example, like creating a new page, right? Creating a new page, you dumped in a page. All of a sudden, you have a bunch of decisions to make. Is this going to be like a regular using the regular page template, or is it going to use a full width one where you're like building a page out? Like, are there like ways of like short circuiting these decisions so that the agent knows and can prompt and kind of get people past that? I think we and WordPress, we go through so many little painful micro interactions that
Mm,
I'm thinking about like, how can you if you can solve those like in the underlying system, then you can surface those in a UI, and then agents also can take advantage of those things. Because yeah, I don't think the UIs are going to wait. There's a human thing about people wanting to get in there and just tweak the dials and see it, and then confidently know it's done without having to like flip back over and kind of do that. I think keeping your context right in front of you and changing something, there's something like I don't know gratifying about doing that. And then also, like, there are going to be questions about costs and energy use around all this stuff. Like, if I can get in
yeah.
there and just go boop and change the font size and it's done, or we can come up with an intuitive, different, all kinds of intuitive ways of tweaking all kinds of settings, changing the font size, padding, whatever, to make it easier, so that you don't have to just ask a chatbot for it. So I don't know. I feel like we shouldn't assume and we shouldn't build towards this idea like, well, agents are going to do everything, so we don't have to fix these problems because an agent's just going to do it later anyway. No, the experience in editor has to be supreme to begin with so that the underlying systems know how to like work with it the same way. So I think that's, I don't know, it's something I always come back to where I'm like, we got to fix this no matter what is happening. If everyone wants to spend a bunch of time learning the AI stuff, I'm all about that. But these everyday problems, we still got to fix them so that people stay. That's
Yeah,
it.
I think that's a
I
good.
got it back.
You got it. I think that is a good point because I feel like I'm trying to, when I come into any AI discussion, remember that not everybody has like unlimited access to tokens. That's actually expensive and getting more
Yeah.
expensive, and that there's an environmental and like energy impact to it, and that the best way to do it is to use AI to build something that you then don't need AI for. Like use it to build
Yeah.
a piece of
Right.
software to do something for you. Then you just use the software. And I think the idea that I'm going to have to AI every single tweak, every single change going forward seems kind of, or I'm going to have to go into my code editor and manually write the code myself if I don't have, Wi-Fi or, whatever it is. It's like none of that seems sustainable. So like I do kind of agree with you. Like the user interface is probably going to stick around for a long time and it should just continue getting better. And we've had a big push internally at WooCommerce where we're focused really on our like backlog of like issues. Like the concept is like these are real issues. Real people came and reported them to us. They've been sitting on GitHub for, a couple years
Mm-hmm.
now. And like, sure, we could think about what's the future, but it's like, no, these people are actually using it now. They're probably, people don't just change their commerce platform overnight. Like that's a big decision. So they're probably, a lot of them are just invested. So like, why not just fix all that, make it really better for them first before we think about some of these other things, like just clean up a lot of these like last, like you said, those little like micro, friction points that you hit a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times where it's like, oh, if I update a product but I don't do this first, it doesn't work right, and I always have to do this extra step because of that bug, and all these little things where it's like, no, let's just like get all of that clean. So like that's been the focus internally, and I think you're right that like especially with WooCommerce, like at some point I need to log in and just look at a list of my products and I need to be able
Mm-hmm.
to change the prices. Like, yes, I do want an AI, like go find all my hats and put them on sale. Like that's cool. And people will use that. But a lot of people are like, no, I just want to open the website and like change a thing and see what my, recent orders are and see what all my stuff is. And like, that's just probably going to be how we interact. Like software itself is not going to go away just because an agent can do all this stuff for you. I think, I mean, 6 months I could be like, oh, I don't even open my computer, but we'll
Possible.
see.
Yeah, I've seen the activity on the Woo GitHub. Lots of tickets going on. That stuff, man. It seems obvious, but that stuff all adds up. All those like micro friction points, they add up, and it makes you feel kind of bummed about software. And so,
Mm-hmm.
and you feel it over time. You're like, man, you're bummed when you got to go log in to do a WooCommerce thing or whatever. Not necessarily WooCommerce, just for this example.
Yeah.
But if there's a thing that bugs you in it and you got to go do it every time, I've had apps like that and services that I use. I've just recently stopped using and build my own. I don't want to be that guy, but I'm like, I can't stand the way this thing works. And so whether it's WooCommerce or WordPress itself, WordPress core, like the North Star should be not just like building something that people can use, but they like using it. That is so hard. Like the gap between like usable and like people like using it is like
Mm-hmm.
universes apart. So, if you could build towards that, and WooCommerce is tricky because e-commerce is tricky. There's so many
Yeah.
considerations there. But I think with the power and flexibility and customization in WooCommerce, it can be done. But like you said, you got to solve all these other little problems first, clearing those issues out and kind of finding an opinion about like we're going this way and we're building this way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it seems to be moving very much in the right direction.
Yeah, there's been a lot of good progress. I think WordPress has a lot of potential. There's like a lot of things in the UI where I'm like, that's a really good improvement. Now let's just get it across all of WordPress. Like this looks nice. Let's just get it. Let's just put it everywhere because it's good enough.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
obviously, it's a lot easier to go vibe code your own custom thing that's perfect for you than it is to build a
Yep.
platform that like, millions and millions of websites run. It's kind of crazy, but I agree with you. The ultimate goal, it should be fun to use software. Like if I'm not enjoying logging into something, that's not a good sign. So,
Hmm.
I'll say I appreciate the Ollie approach of like, let's just make things a little bit easier, a little bit more fun. And maybe we could wrap up. You just like, I would assume if you're listening to this, you know where Ollie is, but maybe you just like tell people where do they go to find Ollie to, what's the call to action?
Yeah, you can go to Ollie WP, OLLIE, WP.com. I say that because when I go do videos and do transcripts, it always says ALI, as in like Ali. and I always have
Mm.
to replace it. And it's like, do people hear that when I say it? I think of Ollie, like the skateboard trick, but I don't know if people know that. Anyway, it's Ollie WP, and then my Twitter, just type Mike McAlister, you'll find me there. And yeah, we do videos. Like I do a good amount of videos these days. I'm trying, man. Video is a grind. I like doing it, and the finished product, I'm like, cool, that's great. But man, no matter how many times you try to optimize the workflow, it's still just a very manual process right now. So, but we put together these kind of tutorial videos, and some of them are Ollie related, and some of them are just like, here's how to build with all of this new stuff. So I encourage people to check those out because people seem to really like those videos.
Yeah, videos are tough, especially now. My kids are home from school for the summer, so there's always some sort of screaming in the background. But it is what it is. Awesome. Thanks for hanging out today, Mike.
Yeah, dude, no problem.